beautiful, beautiful. And thank you. Thank you for all the rehearsals. All of you. You too, Charles. So this morning, I want to talk about a subject that is important to each of us, and that is to be teachable no matter what age. Be teachable. Because you know what? When we cease to learn, when we think we know it all, our lives are pretty much over. No one can tell us anything, right? We're going to talk about that for just a few minutes, and I'm going to encourage you to remain teachable. I read a study not long ago of some top leaders in a variety of fields. And the interviewers were trying to determine just what it is that sets these leaders apart. How do they get so good at what they do when there's so many others that are mediocre? What's the difference? What do you think it is? They're open-minded and teachable. They never get to a point where they think they know it all. They always believe there's more to learn. I know Scott Peck, who used to write several books in the 90s. He was a psychologist, and he said that he thought that one day he would grow up. And then he learned we really don't. We never completely finish growing up. We complete what we need to complete in this lifetime. And if we don't complete it in this lifetime, many believe, and I'm one of those that believe, we go on, get a sabbatical up there, and get to come back and work on it a bit more. So there was a woman who had just celebrated her 85th birthday, and she was working on this quilt for her grandson, her great-grandson. She was just so proud of it. She was so enthusiastic about it. She had it almost completed, except one square, and it was the center square. And she was saving that so that she could ask him what he'd like to have there. So she asked him one day, "What would you like to have in the center of your quilt?" And he responded in a way she hadn't expected nor anticipated. He said, "I want a turtle." So she sits and says, turtle. She's thinking to herself, "I've never done one of those. I'm not certain if I can do one of those." So she hems and haws around, and she says, "You sure? There are a whole lot of other things that we could put on in there." Just she names a dozen other things that she's done before. And he's not taking any of it. And he apparently isn't recognizing that she's very uncomfortable with this, that it's something new, and she just doesn't know how to do it. But he does remember the fact that his parents have always encouraged him. And he has known that at whatever age he has gotten to, that he could learn to do something. So he says to her, "I think you're old enough to learn it." So she's taken back a little bit and thinks, "Well, I guess I am old enough to learn it." So what are some of the things that we are old enough to learn? Sometimes, you know what, it takes humility, doesn't it? We have to have a little humility and recognize that maybe we don't know it all. There might be a little bit left that we could learn. Maybe we could learn from our mistakes. Have you ever known anybody that they never seem to learn from their mistakes? Have you ever known anybody? I know we all know a few. They just don't learn from their lessons, or they don't seem to be aware Maybe that's it. That those are lessons, those things that come to you, those challenges, you just keep making the same bad decisions and you don't recognize that's a lesson. And then when it turns south, you're supposed to learn something from that. You're supposed to learn. I read another story, and I'm not that fond of this one because it's some hunters that were hunting for moose, but they were left out into the Canadian wilderness, and they had some luck. So after a few days, they had bagged a couple of moose. And so the airplane came to pick them up, and the pilot looks at them, and he says, "Those are too heavy. I can't carry those and carry you too." So they talked him into it, begged and pleaded and offered bonuses and all sorts of other things. And so he finally relented and let them carry their catch. And they were airlift. They got up in the air and didn't make it too far, not too far downriver. They crashed, not too hard a crash, fortunately, because they didn't get up too high. They crawled out of the wreckage, and one of them says to the other, "I think we made it a little bit further than we did the last time." Have you ever known anyone like that? Maybe it's been you. Maybe it has. Sometimes we just keep trying things, maybe a little differently, and then keep coming up with the same result. It's time to be open-minded. Open-minded. I also read a story about the brilliant Albert Einstein. He once arrived in London carrying his violin case. And after greeting him, an old friend asked, "You still play the violin, Albert?" So this mathematical genius nodded and said, "Yes, but not very well. My teacher says the trouble with you, Mr. Einstein, is that you can't count." You imagine that, a mathematical genius that can't count when it comes to music? Well, I can certainly imagine that. As my husband says, he can't play any sort of instrument, but he can tune a heck of a carburetor. We have to learn what we're good at, don't we? And many times it does take that sense of humility that I was talking about earlier. And there is almost no situation in life where this mantra that I'm going to repeat to you is not applicable. It offers so much value in 7 little words. I am willing to see things differently. I am willing to see things differently. If you already have your mind made up and you're not going to change it, you're going to keep the same misery, the same worries, the same conditions that you have now. I am willing at every point in my life to see things differently. And even in the depth of our grief and our saddest times, and we do know that there are times we grieve and we need a lot of time to heal. Our hearts need to heal, maybe even more than the body, the physical healing, and it takes time. But at some point along the way, we reach a point where we're ready to say, I'm ready and I'm willing to see things differently. I'm ready and I'm willing. So there was a man that said that he had been given a Bible. And there were 2 words in the back of it that stayed with him his entire teaching career. And those words said, "Stay teachable. Stay teachable." And the writer of Proverbs said, "Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee." Be open. And Ben Herbster said, "The greatest waste in the world is the difference between what we are and what we can become. If you do not have a teachable spirit, you will never fulfill your God-given capabilities or enjoy your God-given gifts. Never. Someone who is teachable will almost always have these following traits: a spirit of humility. One of the things you'll find about a narcissist, stay away from them. They do not have a spirit of humility. Take off running. Girls, pick up your purse and run. I've encouraged you to do that before. And guys, you take off running too. If you know someone who does not have a spirit of humility, they're not for you. They're not of your consciousness. Another trait that people that are open and willing to learn, they have a hunger for wisdom daily. Do you? Oh, I do. I'm always in search of some new wisdom, something new, some new story. I just love it all. I love to hear people's stories. I get so excited when someone will share their story with me. And you know what? I always learn something from it, valuable, something that I might be able to pass on to another. They also have opened eyes and unclogged ears. You ever with someone that talks so much, you don't even get a chance to get a word in edgewise? We need to be humble, open eyes, and listen, and a positive outlook. That is so incredibly important. No matter what's going on in the world, your life can be perfect, healed and whole, right where you are. Things don't need to be going your way. Your best candidate may not have won. Your team may not have won. All those things pass on. What's real and true is what you hold in your heart and how you love and how you live and how you show others by demonstrating your own life how to live. Don't let life pass you by. Don't be the one sitting in a chair saying, "I already know it all." One thing I loved about my own mother was that at the end of her years, she had macular degeneration and had lost most of her eyesight. She always wanted to know what was going on with everybody and everything. And I remember she said once, she would hear people talking about their email and these .coms and all this stuff on the computers, and she was curious. Although with her eyesight at that time, she couldn't have seen a computer unless they had a special one for her. So she was extremely curious, and she'd say, "Tell me about that. I know if I had a computer, I could do that old email. I know I could." I said, Mother, I know you could too. And what I liked about her too, she was just from a county in mid-Mississippi, Simpson County, and she and my dad moved to Oak Ridge, Tennessee in the 40s, where he got a job there at the plants that were building the atomic bomb. Not that proud of it, but there you go. There's humanity has needed to learn. We've needed to learn certain things, and but anyway, they moved there, but I love the fact that she was always willing to learn something and observe, and she taught that to us too. She had 3 daughters and 3 sons, and she taught each of us to stand on our own 2 feet, be responsible for yourself, don't depend on anybody because something might happen, and you need to care for yourself. And we're each very independent. Although we're in relationships and we're very stable, and we've been in relationships and very stable and very good ones, and maybe that's why. Because we each stand up proudly and hold our fair weight. So I'm proud for my mother and what she taught us. And I know for all the parents that taught us those things back then, they taught us to take care of ourselves. And that was one thing that was necessary at that time, is learn to be responsible. Learn to be responsible. And always be teachable wherever you are, what age you've attained. Learn something every day. I thank you for being here. I thank you for being my friends. And I just hope that you will have a peaceful day and a wonderful week.